This is episode 17 of the Battle of Ohio podcast. This week, the Bengals continue their Burrow-less escapades against the Tua-less Miami Dolphins, while the Browns play a game that actually matters against the Tennessee Titans. Definitely a lot of intrigue in that matchup, considering the potential playoff implications. And while the Bengals aren't nearly as interesting of a story at this point in the season, we decided to try to make it a little bit more interesting by bringing on an old friend of mine this week, Alex Peterman. Say hi, Alex.
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
He is a
What's
Bengals
up,
fan
Alex?
and a reporter for the Palm Beach Post, so kind of seemed like the perfect guest to bring on this week. Um, talk about the Bengals and how they're definitely going to win with Brandon Allen. But maybe give us a little bit of insight about how Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to forget how to play football. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Dolphins are just an interesting storyline this year because while the Bengals have obviously losing Burrow has put them in a huge hole. I mean, the offensive talent just goes right along with Burrow, and I don't know how they're going to match up against a Dolphins defense that has just dominated opponents year in, year out. I think the Dolphins are actually, at times, I thought, okay, maybe they're a little bit of an underrated team. Last couple of weeks, ever since the switch to Tua, and now obviously they've gone back to Fitzmagic, I think they're a little overrated. I think that they've got some holes that can be taken advantage of. I don't know if the Bengals are the team to do it, but I do think that the holes exist. I mean, they brought in Tua at such an interesting point in the season. I really was a little dumbfounded at the decision because it seemed like they were committing to a transition at signal caller in a time period where you expected growing pains that could have very well affected a playoff berth. That being said, this defense is really, really strong. I'm in and around Dolphins coverage constantly because of my work with the Palm Beach Post. So I read all the storylines. I watch all the games. Obviously, being in South Florida here, we get the Dolphins games constantly. But this should be a pretty interesting matchup to watch. I think for the Bengals, it's going to be about limiting turnovers. It's going to be about limiting mistakes and trying to find some sort of rhythm. Obviously, the Bengals liked what they had in Allen. They were very fast to name him the starter over Ryan Finley. I mean, it's not really that's not really a decision in my head, but he didn't perform great. He didn't, light up the scoreboard or anything against the Giants, but he was serviceable. He made some decent throws. He kept the Bengals involved in the game, and obviously they dealt with the Daniel Jones injury with the hamstring, but it should be an interesting game. I mean, I expect the Dolphins to win. I expect them to win, especially with Fitzpatrick. I think he's at the moment the better quarterback for this team. It's for the Bengals. It's just keeping it close. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I think so. But to reiterate the thing that we say every single week, I know they managed to defeat the eviscerated remains of the Baltimore Ravens with plenty of help from the refs, but the Steelers still suck.
The Steelers still suck. The Steelers still indeed suck. Even though they're 11-0, but they still suck though.
Well, they're 11-0 against a bunch of bullshit. Let's be honest. Like, what good win have they had this year except for the Browns? And is that even like? I think that has a lot to do with the fact that they're in the Browns' heads, man. Like, are the Steelers really like with the Bengals? Are the Steelers really 12 straight games in a row better than the Bengals? Maybe, but yeah. still, yes. I don't know. That's a hell of a record to have. I think part of it's just the fact that they're in the Bengals' head.
Welcome to the Battle of Ohio podcast, where we follow the revival of the historic rivalry between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns.
So before we really kind of get, we kind of already got going, but before we really get going, why don't you tell me what you got to drink, Alex? I am actually really curious.
Oh, sure. I've got a Dos Equis Amber. I'm going pretty standard here, but I mixed it up with the amber drink. I normally go pale ales or some lagers and whatnot, but I had this in the back, so I went ahead and pulled it out. What about you?
I didn't even know Dos Equis made amber.
You learn something new every day.
That sounds delicious. I might have to check that out. I'm gonna go last because I have a really interesting beer to talk about. So you
Thomas said he was really interesting. I don't know.
Look, see, I had a Great Lakes Christmas Ale in my hand, and I was going to buy a Great Lakes Christmas Ale, but I decided to go with the White Claw Mango today.
Now he's got a White Claw. Beautiful.
Well, for two reasons. There's two reasons why I went with the White Claw today. For one, I watched that Steelers-Ravens game yesterday, and I couldn't help but think these two teams have done nothing but drink White Claw before the game because they are really in touch with their family. No, I'm joking. I'm not going to say that. But these two teams have definitely drank a lot of White Claw before that game, but that game was horrible. Secondly, it's Thursday. And when I was in college, we had something called Thirsty Thursdays. And my best friend Cyrus, to impress the girls, would drink White Claw during our senior year of college. So shout out to you, Cyrus. You go ahead and get those co-eds.
All right.
I
Respectfully.
would have gone with the first option, but you redeemed yourself a little bit with the explanation.
Yeah, it's definitely I don't know. I see you busting out the White Claw, and I'm definitely skeptical, but that's admirable.
Shout out to the co-eds, y'all.
Yeah, shout out.
I'll drink to that.
I've got a habanero blonde ale.
Ooh.
It's by Country Boy Brewing. They got a little description on it. This beer is sneaky. You think you know it well, but don't let the first taste fool you. Ale brewed with habaneros. Nacho bait. Okay. Nacho bait will leave you feeling the burn and wanting more. Wow, that sounds promising.
Do you want more, Kyle? Have you tried it? Do you want more?
I don't know. We're going to find out.
Don't know yet. Oh, okay. First drink.
This is going to be a
ladies
fun
and gentlemen.
show.
Woo!
This is going to be a fun show.
There's definitely some habanero in that. Woo!
This is going to be a fun episode.
I like that. Man, that's like that. Like it doesn't burn until you wait a couple of seconds, and then it just like it hits you in the back of the throat.
It's funny. There's this beer called Mexican Standoff that I enjoy at one of the local breweries. It's due south down here in Boynton Beach, and it's actually brewed with jalapeno peppers, and so it's kind of a dark stout-like beer. It's got a little hint of cinnamon in it. It's a really smooth kind of just stout taste, and I'm not normally a stout fan, but it's got a really smooth taste to it, and then it just kicks in with the spice right after that, and it is excellent. I know what you're talking about with that aftertaste. Very good.
All right, well, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and get into these games. Let's see. Bengals or Browns first? I feel like we should go ahead and talk about this Browns game first because, well, honestly, maybe we should talk about it second for this reason. But I'm thinking the one that's actually interesting to talk about here is the Browns game because y'all are facing up against the Tennessee Titans. And this game could really go a long way towards determining maybe not who makes the playoffs, because I think the teams that are currently in the playoffs, which is the Browns, Colts, and Raiders, as far as the wild card teams, I think those are going to be the teams that are in the playoffs. But this game could really determine seeding, I think. And if the Titans aren't able to hold the Colts off, although I think they will because they just beat them. But if the Titans are not able to hold the Colts off, this could really make a huge difference to playoff seeding. Now, the way I see it, the Browns really need to win this game to prove that they're worthy of being a playoff team because there's been a lot of not so great games that the Browns have put up. No, I mean there have been some good games against good opponents, but the thing is that they really haven't come out and shown that, hey, when we get to the playoffs, we're going to be able to compete in the playoffs. And we talked about the similarities between, the Bengals run a futility when I was a kid, and then the Browns run a futility now on either last episode or the episode before that. One thing the Bengals did not do when they finally did make it to the playoffs was prove that they deserved to be there.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be key for the. Maybe, obviously, that's not a key for how this game actually goes, but as far as the Browns going forward, I think you guys really need to put a statement win out here.
Yeah, so I am really, as a Browns fan, I'm really excited about this game. This is probably one of the biggest Browns games of my lifetime so far. Probably, I could probably name them off the top of my head, the biggest Browns games of my life. Probably number one being that I was born in 1994 for references. I do not count that year. So I'm not counting the Browns versus the Patriots in 1994 or 95, whatever that was. But probably in my lifetime, the biggest Browns game is probably that Steelers Browns game, that first playoff game the Browns had since they came back. First and only playoff game in 2001. And this game is probably up there in importance because this is a game for the Browns to finally prove that they belong. This is a statement game. So, we talked about the Steelers not really beating anybody and being 11-0. And who have they beaten? Well, the same thing goes for the Browns. The Browns and the Steelers have a very similar schedule. Obviously, since they're in the same conference, obviously they're going to play the same team or same division. They're going to play the same teams. And the only team that the Browns are getting semi-credit for beating is the Colts. People are still questioning Baker Mayfield's legitimacy. People are still questioning the defense of the Browns, which they should. People are still questioning how the Browns can compete and are they mentally tough enough to go against teams with winning records. And also, the biggest reason why this game is huge is because if you remember, opening day last year, the Tennessee Titans smoked the Browns on national television opening day when the Browns had all this hype about being this great team with all these new weapons and all these new players and everything. And it just kind of seemed like the season just got worse after that. So this game have a lot of interesting storylines to it. This game have so many interesting storylines to it. For one, I believe the coach of the Tennessee Titans has some Northeast Ohio roots, if I'm not mistaken. He went to Ohio State and he was born in Akron, Ohio. So he has so he knows what it means, what Ohio football means. So this game is going to be personal to him. The game's going to be personal for Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry and Myles Garrett because they remember being embarrassed last year. This game is going to be personal to Nick Chubb and it's going to be personal to Derrick Henry because these are the two running backs who are in an argument for best running backs in the NFL. So this game is going to be so much fun to watch. This game is going to be so much fun to watch because there's so many underlying storylines going on in this game, and we get to just watch them go head to head. And it's the first time in a long time where we can say during a regular season game, the Browns are in a marquee matchup. So I'm really excited about this game, and I'm really excited about this matchup. And I'm just there's so many things, there's so many angles to this game that I'm just excited about. And I think the Browns have a really good chance coming in Sunday.
You could potentially make the argument that this is the game of the week. Let's see, what does the schedule look like this week? We got no games involving the Bengals or Jets are going to be the game of the week, or probably the Texans. Patriots, no. Chiefs, Broncos, no. Cowboys, Ravens, no. Bills, 49ers is a pretty good game, but I don't think the 49ers are really a playoff team, though, so... No, yeah, this is maybe the Rams and Cardinals. That's a pretty good matchup too.
That would be a good game, yeah.
But other than that, this is at the very least the AFC game of the week for sure.
Yeah.
This Browns Titans game could definitely be interesting. I'm really interested to see like the really big obvious thing that everybody's looking to see is obviously the running backs. Like you said, it's two running backs. At least the starting running backs are both in the conversation of who is the best running back in the NFL. But for me, I think the thing for me that I'm really interested to watch is the quarterbacks. because
Yeah.
it's really it's on the Browns end. It's really about, can Baker Mayfield manage this game well enough to help the running game, especially against that kind of up and down Titans defense. What can Baker Mayfield do to assist his running game? And can he be that Ryan Tannehill type of, like, game managing, sometimes gunslinging, high flying type quarterback? And if he can, then is that going to be enough to beat the Titans? And then on the other end, I'm interested to see what Ryan Tannehill does, because he's just been so good this year.
Yeah, he's been solid.
But he's not. Is he really as good as he's looked? I don't like maybe he is. I don't know. But the thing is, I saw a stat earlier this year. He's like, when the Bengals played the Titans, Ryan Tannehill's been putting up like Patrick Mahomes, like not fully Patrick Mahomes like numbers, but some of the averages and stuff that he's putting up are like Patrick Mahomes like. And I don't think Ryan Tannehill is Patrick Mahomes. So
nobody's Patrick Mahomes.
Nobody's exactly. Patrick Mahomes. So Patrick it's Mahomes. Just kind of like, when does the mirage come down? I don't know.
Well,
Alex,
go
ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's a lot to be said when a quarterback's in a good system, when a quarterback has a good coach. To give you the numbers reference between the two quarterbacks, Ryan Tannehill is 23 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, 65% completion rating, 65% completion rating, while Baker Mayfield is 17 touchdowns to 7 interceptions with a 61% completion rating. So Ryan Tannehill obviously have the better quarterback stats. He's probably I haven't watched a lot of Tennessee games this year, but what I've seen, he's asked to throw the ball more, while Baker Mayfield obviously forced to, when you play in the elements, you are forced to hand the ball off, and the Browns had a lot of games in the elements. And so we had 3 games where Baker Mayfield didn't really have to pass that much, because it was all about the running game. So there's stats. Ryan Tannehill has an advantage on the stats, and Ryan Tannehill have looked better this year in the stats. For me, I think this game is no bigger. I think the person who needs this game the most is Baker Mayfield. I think out of all the players that are on the field Sunday, the player that needs to have the most approval Sunday is Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is, I put out a tweet, there's nothing more controversial in 2020 than Baker Mayfield. Now, obviously, I'm being facetious, but when we talk about quarterbacks, though, maybe Tom Brady, but I don't think there's been a more controversial quarterback in the league than Baker Mayfield. It's either you're for him or against him. Everybody have overwhelming evidence why he is a franchise quarterback, and everybody have overwhelming evidence why he isn't a franchise quarterback. And one of his biggest criticisms is he looks good against bad teams. But what does he do against good teams? What does he do against teams that aren't named the Bengals? Or the Jaguars. And so I'm very interested in how he performs. Personally, I think Baker Mayfield is gonna shine this game. I remember last year when the Browns played the Bills last year, and the Bills came in, and the Bills had one of the better defenses in the league last year. And this was with Freddie Kitchens as the coach. Baker Mayfield led a game-winning drive to defeat the Bills with about 45 seconds left on the clock. I remember that drive, and I remember Baker Mayfield doing that, and him throwing that game-winning touchdown. I'm never going to forget that touchdown. I'm also never going to forget the game against the Bengals this year. Even though it was against the Bengals and the Bengals defense, Baker Mayfield still drove the ball 80 yards with no timeouts with 1 minute and 6 seconds left on the clock. That's what great quarterbacks do. That's not what good quarterbacks do. That's what great quarterbacks do. He did with no timeouts, 80 yards, 1 minute and 6 seconds. Completed every single pass from the third quarter on, from the second quarter on. That these are things that he could do when he's locked in. So for me, it seems that it's not a talent issue with Baker, it's a mental thing. And when Baker Mayfield is mentally ready to show up, he does. And we need him to be mentally focused. And I'm not 100% certain he will be mentally focused. I am about 80% I'm 80% certain he'll be mentally focused for this game. But I do think, no, I'm gonna go ahead and say that he will be mentally focused on this game because I'm looking at the Ohio State thing right there, and I remember the Ohio State game last year. And one thing about Baker Mayfield is that he doesn't forget. And if you remember that Ohio State Oklahoma game, the second game they played, Oklahoma goes up to Ohio State, and if you remember, Ohio State beat them the year before. So they go up to Oklahoma, goes to Ohio State, and Baker Mayfield knows the revenge game. He doesn't forget that game from the year before, and he goes absolutely off on Ohio State and their defense, and he plants the flag on their 50-yard line. And he says that I'm the best quarterback on the field. I'm better than you all. And I want to see that Baker Mayfield. That's the Baker Mayfield I want to see on Sunday.
Well, he certainly wasn't wrong. I mean, look, we've said on this podcast before, me and Thomas are not Ohio State fans, despite that abomination on the wall behind him. Alex, however, is an Ohio State fan, but I think even Alex will admit that Ohio State quarterbacks typically are not really much of nothing.
Wow.
Yeah. That feels pretty good.
Just messing.
Hey, so quick shot real quick then. I got a question for you, Alex.
Sure.
Who will have more rushing yards this game? The Cleveland Browns or the Tennessee Titans? I would say Derrick Henry versus Nick Chubb, but then you also have to throw Kareem Hunt in there. So
Right. Yeah, I think it's an interesting matchup, and you look at these running attacks. Both rush defenses are pretty solid. I mean, I think you're dealing with. I think Tennessee is a slightly better ranked against the rush, but you're looking at a tandem with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt that has performed admirably throughout the year. I mean, these are really, really good running backs, and to have both of them on one team with changing of pace to be able to ride the hot hand, I mean, it's an excellent scenario for them. At the same time, you look at the Titans, Derrick Henry is just a monster. That being said,
ask Earl Thomas.
There you go. Being said, if you look at the numbers throughout this year, his averages are all over the place. Even in several of his wins, he's averaged under 4 yards a carry. They repeatedly try to get him the ball, but that's something interesting I've noticed about the Titans in general. They just tend to demonstrate inconsistent play, and when you almost least expect it, they'll have 3 straight phenomenal wins, just like you experienced here. We all experienced watching as spectators in the beginning of the year, jumping out to, what was it, 4 or 5 straight wins? I think they were 4-0, and what was the Steelers handing them their first loss?
Yeah.
To be whether it was 4-1 and 5-1, whatever it ends up being. Then they go and they lose against the Bengals, which is a head scratcher. They barely beat the Browns, or I'm sorry, not the Browns, excuse me, the Bears, which is a huge head scratcher, perhaps even more of a head scratcher, and they get dominated against the Colts. And that very same team, they come back and they dominate that team. And they beat Indianapolis by almost 20 points. I think it was 45-26, I think is what the final score was. It's just unusual. It's a hard team to predict. And if you notice, obviously a team is going to run more when they're up. Derrick Henry is averaging a minimum of 5 to 6 carries higher or more in their wins than they are in their losses. At the last couple of games, 27 and 28 carries. He's combined for over 300 yards in those 2 games. And he's averaging, first 4.8 and then 6.6 yards a carry. In my mind right now, Nick Chubb is a better running back. That's in my mind right now. That whether that's because he's able to get a little bit of rest here and there in the games with Kareem Hunt coming in, whether it's because Derrick Henry's being asked to carry on slightly more of a workload, I don't know the reason, but I think Nick Chubb's the better running back. As far as who has the better stat line in terms of the running game as a whole, ultimately it comes down to the pacing of the game that both teams have. I think the Titans have the ability to be a little bit more consistent. But I'm going to go ahead off on a limb and say that I think that the Browns have a better game in the run category as far as stats-wise. When you combine Kareem Hunt and you combine Nick Chubb, I think that's a better 1-2 punch, arguably, than Derrick Henry, as good as he is. I don't think the game is going to come down to the running game. I think that both running games will perform regardless. I think the game goes back to Ryan Tannehill versus Baker Mayfield, just as Thomas was saying. And I mean, the question is, does Baker Mayfield wake up feeling dangerous that week?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is partly a mental thing because, just like the Titans, I think you see some inconsistency at times. And, regardless of who sees it and who doesn't, I think these teams are very, very similar in how they perform week to week basis. Very eerily similar.
Yeah, it's almost evenly matched, but I still think I want to call it evenly matched, but I don't want to call it evenly matched because the Titans are a team that been to the playoffs and they won playoff games, and the Browns are a team that are trying to get to where the Titans were last year. And Titans are trying to take that next big step into Steelers territory or Chiefs territory or what the Patriots been the last couple of years. What's interesting about the running game is that you get Myles Garrett back for the Browns, and Olivia Vernon's been playing well. The problem for the Browns is the Browns are going to have a depleted secondary. You're not going to have Denzel Ward. You're not going to have Rodney Harris. Even though you might have Sione Takitaki might be able to make it back. I'm not sure. It says that Sione Takitaki haven't. So it doesn't seem like Sione Takitaki will be able to make it back. So we're going to be limited in the secondary. So we're going to need some of our secondary players in the secondary to show up. Looking at Houston Jehu. We do get Jordan Elliott back. He's been a great rookie. So for the Browns on defense to stop Derrick Henry, it's gonna be tough because our defense just feels depleted. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to slow down. We might be able to slow down Derrick Henry, but I'm more worried about how the Browns are going to defend the play action per se. I'm not sure. I haven't watched a lot of Ryan Tannehill play, but I can imagine that the Tennessee Titans, when they looked at the Brown secondary, they're going to say, "Hey, we could play action this team," and they won't be able to stop it because they don't have any good corners. They don't have any corners that really scare us. They're getting more healthy on receiver, and that Browns defense just scares me because I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to stop these guys. So we need big plays out of Myles Garrett. We need big plays out of Olivia Vernon. What's the term? Speed up the clock, where you have lots of pass rush getting to the quarterback. So Olivia Vernon and Myles Garrett, they have to get to Ryan Tannehill quickly and early to speed up his clock. So maybe he might panic more and release the ball earlier. But that secondary concerns me for the Browns. I just don't know how we can stop the passing game at all. Man, that's what concerns me about this game.
Well, and you would think that the Titans are really going to utilize a lot of that because just in the same way that the Browns they get that running game going and then they really start implementing a lot of play action. And I actually haven't watched too much of what the Titans do, but I would imagine if they can get Derrick Henry going enough, and they'll start kind of throwing some different things the Browns defense way just to try to mix things up and try to confuse them and really try to take advantage of that really kind of a younger secondary that they got going on there.
Yeah, but the Browns' best defense is their offense, is Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, ball control, clock management.
Well, that will definitely. I was just going to say that'll definitely be a good strategy they need to implement. But you go ahead.
I will say that Ryan Tannehill, I've had the opportunity to watch a couple Titans games this year. Ryan Tannehill is a quarterback that you can rattle. He is not a perfect quarterback. I remember distinctly the couple games that I watched him play against the Steelers. I watched him play against the Colts the first time around. And I think I watched one other game. I can't remember what it was, but in both of those games, which were 2 losses, Ryan Tannehill was asked to, at certain points in the game, Derrick Henry was to some extent removed from the game plan. The Titans were fighting from behind. They were one or two scores down on both occasions. When you remove Derrick Henry from the game plan, which is not an easy thing to do, I'll preface it with that, Tannehill can be rattled. He relies on Derrick Henry to set up that offense so that he can reach out on play action and get the ball downfield to his playmakers. Obviously, Brown is a home run threat at any given moment. His averages are absurd. You drew comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, and that's where those averages in terms of the parallels are coming from. They're coming from 60-yard, 45-yard, 57-yard touchdown passes to Brown. You've got Corey Davis that has stepped up at times. He's had a couple of games where he's notched over the century mark. But that all starts with the running game being able to set up play action and get the ball downfield to some very, very talented wide receiver. And don't forget the tight end threats as well. But when he is asked to do that without the setup, where he is asked to dictate the pace of a football game, he is mistake prone. And you start to see a little bit of the quarterback that is not the just simply 4 interception quarterback this year. You start to see a little bit of that quarterback that struggled in Miami when he was asked to perform without Derrick Henry in the backfield because he's just not a perfect quarterback. No one is, obviously, but he is at times far from it. If you ask too much of him, the results will show that. Similar to Baker Mayfield at times, but as far as how to attack Tannehill in this offense, I think by repeatedly showing that you are not going to allow the running game to get into a rhythm, by repeatedly mixing up blitz packages, I think that those are some of the keys that you can look forward to with mixing up Vernon and Garrett, trying to bring the outside pressure, and making sure that you're clogging Derrick Henry as much as possible. Put the game in Tannehill's hands. Because once you do that, and once the game becomes a little bit more one-dimensional, it becomes a different story.
Let's go ahead and talk about these Bengals now. First of all, Alex, I have a really quick question for you.
Shoot.
What jersey is that?
It's your old buddy Carson Palmer right here. It's an old jersey. I decided to put it on just for you because I know you're such a huge Carson. There he goes. Let's see it. What are you pulling out? There we go. Matching jerseys, my dude. Matching jerseys. Oh, never mind.
I'm going to frame that one eventually, but I figured I'd frame Gio Bernard first.
There you go. My local Carson Palmer fans of old. I'm a big Carson Palmer supporter. I think that the franchise is more to blame than he is in terms of how everything went down, but that's another conversation for another story and potentially for another episode.
Alex Peterman, noted Carson Palmer supporter and Andy Dalton hater.
I wouldn't say hater, but all right, we can go with that. I mean,
back in the days where me and Alex actually know each other from we know each other from Cincy Jungle. Alex got me the position on Cincy Jungle when I worked there years ago, and we very much had different perspectives on the quarterbacks back then, and still do. I was always a big supporter of, Andy's a good enough quarterback. Let's just try to build around him. And Alex was always like, I don't know if he's good enough. That's ridiculous. And I'm like, you're ridiculous. Stop it.
Only at a certain point, though. Let's be honest. I mean, by that point of those conversations, we were like 3 and done in terms of the playoff structure. We were, it wasn't so much. I mean, he was a great regular season quarterback. He always will be. But when it comes to those clutch moments, I mean, I think 0-7 on Monday Night Football, or 0-11, or he's played more than that. So he has never won a Monday Night Football game. He's never won in the playoffs. Those they tend to add up over time, and it's just the nature of the business.
You know what? You could make the same argument about Lamar Jackson, and he won an MVP.
I'm certainly willing to make that argument. I'm not straying from that argument. I agree with you.
By the way, Baker Mayfield won his only Monday Night Football game, and he won both his Thursday Night Football games.
See, there you go. That's what I'm talking about. At the same time, we're dealing with a pretty small sample size for Lamar Jackson. He very well might come out and show out very differently. There's the argument of his ability as a passer, but that aside, the sample size got to a point where it became too much to forgive for Dalton in terms of the consistency. For me.
Yeah, sure.
So what was your question here, Todd? Was that just about the Palmer jersey? Or
that was. I do have some more questions for you, but the question I was setting up was for the jersey, because I was pretty sure it was Palmer, but I wasn't sure because I kind of see a number on your shoulder. But
forget Bengals and Fins. Let's just talk about this Palmer versus Dalton. I mean this.
Well, you know what? No, we can get into that at a different time, but we do need to talk about the Dolphins and the Bengals.
As unfortunate as that matchup may be.
Well, you want to talk about unfortunate. The whole world thought we were going to get Burrow versus Tua Part 2. Like, after that amazing – this was actually the game that got me thinking about Burrow in the very first place when LSU played Alabama, and I watched that, and I was like – because I was a big Tua Tagovailoa. I was a big Tua Tagovailoa guy for the Bengals back then. I was saying that's who we need to go get. That's going to be our next quarterback. And then I saw Joe Burrow just go absolutely off, and I'm like, okay, maybe these Bengals fans who are talking about Joe Burrow, maybe they have a point. I just thought they were ridiculous Ohio State homers, but But then again, the Ohio State homers were all about Chase Young. So, but unfortunately, we're not going to get either of those quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, obviously, with the thing that happened to his leg area. And then Tua Tagovailoa with the injury to his ability to play quarterback, it seems. Now, from what I understand, Brian Flores, and I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if you can confirm this, Alex, but from what I understand, the explanation as to why he's not playing is because of some sort of thumb injury or something. But I think we know why he's not playing.
Potentially. I mean that. When you make a quarterback decision like that in the middle of the season, and regardless of whether it was actually Brian Flores or not, I mean, I do think that Brian Flores is a great coach. I think he's done phenomenal things with this program in the span of very, very limited time. But when that decision is made and you can see a noticeable decline in offensive potential with the team, in a year where you are fighting for a playoff berth, you're going to draw some backlash, and you're going to have to come up with a reason. So whether they originally benched because of whether it was a thumb or a toe or whatever it was at certain circumstances, I had originally thought that there was some kind of toe injury that then people were saying thumb, but I could be wrong. It's just whatever the reasoning is, I think that the whole team is better off with Fitzpatrick than they are with Tua, at least in the current span of play right now, at least in the current playing atmosphere for this team.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that Fitzpatrick is currently the better playing quarterback. I will say, though, I could be wrong about this, but Tua played the last 3 games, right? Not the very last. He didn't play against the Jets, right, because of an injury.
Right.
But he played against the Broncos, Chargers, and Cardinals, and I believe that the Cardinals game was the first one he played in, right? Or was it the Rams game?
Tua played in the Cardinals game, and I think that was his second game. I believe the Rams game was first.
Okay. So, well, for as much as we want to talk about how much better Ryan Fitzpatrick looks than Tua Tagovailoa, they were 3-1 with Tua, and and they were 3-0, and then they kind of fell flat against the Broncos. But with Fitzpatrick, they got off to a 0-2 start, and then they lost 3 of their first 4 games, and then they went on that run. But then they put Tua in there, and now it's kind of looking like they very well could be on the outside of the playoff race looking in. So, was it really all that smart for him to pull Fitzpatrick? Because I know what they're thinking. I know they're thinking, get the young kid in, give him a chance to succeed. But it's kind of like, when you're the head coach of a football team, you're making decisions for who gives you the best chance to win today, right? You're not necessarily thinking about some guy's development who might pay off in like a year or two.
I totally agree with that. And that's where the rumors came from about shopping Tua, which I think are out otherworldly in terms of being ridiculous. I think that's the most absurd thing that I've heard possibly this year. They're not shopping Tua. That being said, the decision to bench Fitzpatrick in place of Tua was almost equally ridiculous, at least in my opinion, as a spectator who has a pretty good knowledge of the game of football. Obviously, the three of us are here to debate and to argue and to talk about these situations with these teams and with these games. But I go back to the marked decrease in offensive potential for this team when you went to Tua. You're dealing with growing pains. I'm not going to say that 3 years from now, Fitzpatrick is still going to be a better quarterback than Tua. I'm not going to say that. But right now, my belief is that Fitzpatrick gives this team the better opportunity to win. That being said, I think we need to put that conversation on hold because as of the last half hour or so, it was reported that Tua is expected to start this game.
Yes.
I just read that on a couple of different sources are now saying that his thumb injury is believed to be healed enough to where he is able to start this game. He was a limited participant on Wednesday. Running back Salvon Ahmed was also, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, he's also, he's dealing with a shoulder injury, but I believe he was questionable and is limited on Wednesday as well. So who knows what we're going to see in terms of the running potential and as far as Tua being back. So it's that changes the conversation a little bit, to be honest with you.
So personally, I think that I was kind of floored when they took Tua out. I didn't understand it. You pulled that trigger. Why you just gonna holster him now? The severity of the thumb injury, yeah, okay. So now we say you think this thumb injury was a problem. So I think that Tua should be playing because I think this experience is invaluable. I don't think that the Dolphins are going to win the Super Bowl this year, and I think you have a chance to give a young quarterback the opportunity to compete in a playoff hunt. And I think if you have a chance to give a young quarterback the opportunity to compete in the playoff hunt, I think you gotta let him do it. And I think Tua has been, he's a rookie quarterback. I know he had his struggles, but he's a rookie quarterback. And you're a 7-4 team, and you're playing against teams like the Bengals and the Jets. That's an opportunity to build his confidence. And I think Tua should be playing this game because I think this is an opportunity for Tua to gain his confidence and to build that confidence in a playoff run, and valuable experience he's not going to be able to get unless he actually plays it. So Ryan Fitzpatrick is not the Dolphins' future, but Tua Tagovailoa should be.
Does Tua really truly give him give this team the best opportunity to win in terms of the here and now rather than quarterback of future?
I don't think he does. I
don't either.
I actually, especially this week against the Bengals, because you know what the Bengals have, and it's not just this year, it's not just these players, but it's who the Bengals have historically. I really need to turn that off, or tell them to stop texting me. You know who the Bengals have historically struggled against from a defensive perspective? is tight ends, which, that doesn't have anything to do with the Dolphins, and running quarterbacks or quarterbacks who can run.
Specifically
what
rookies.
does not describe Tua weirdly enough, I thought it would, but it doesn't describe Tua in 2020 is a running quarterback. Tua had, he ran a little bit in the Chargers game, but he ended up with -1 yard. Like he netted -1 yards in rushing against the Chargers, even though he tried to run it 6 times. He did run it for 35 yards total across 7 carries against the Cardinals. But other than that, Tua has not really been running the ball much at all. He's not been a mobile quarterback. And Ryan Fitzpatrick is, out of the two, the much more, seemingly right now, much more mobile quarterback. The quarterback who's more of a threat to potentially run the ball. And like against the Bengals, confuse the hell out of them because for some reason the Bengals just do not know how to handle running quarterbacks. So I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm like, because I don't know. I feel like the Bengals kind of got like, I don't like tanking. So I felt like, I paid my dues with hoping that the Bengals lose games and tank last year. I don't want to do it again. So I don't care if it's Brandon Allen at quarterback. I want the Bengals to win this game. And I don't think the Bengals are going to win. I really don't. And, we'll talk about that more in the prediction segment. But I think that if Tua plays, that's going to give the Bengals a better chance to potentially sneak away with this one than if Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing. And I think if I'm right and the Dolphins lose to us, then you got to start thinking like, I'm not saying you got to start putting Brian Flores on the hot seat, but you do got to start thinking about his decision making and like, what the hell are you doing with this young quarterback? It just, I don't know. It hasn't made any sense to me the way that he's been handling to his development this year. And he's been doing so many great things for the Dolphins, but that is egregious. And by the way, you were talking earlier about the rumors about the Dolphins shopping Tua around. I thought that was hilarious, by the way. I have a friend of mine who's a Dolphins fan, and I had so much fun being like, and he's a big Tua fan too. He was a big Tua fan before the Dolphins drafted him. He was like the main guy, kind of being like, yeah, let's go get Tua. And like I lost a bet to him, so I had to buy him a Tua jersey. And so when those rumors came up, I put my fingers together like Mr. Burns and cackled maniacally and started sending him that because even though I know it's not true, but it was fun. But I think the whole idea behind that was that the Texans gave the Dolphins their pick, and the Texans might potentially end up with the number 1 pick at that point, and then the Dolphins are potentially in play for Trevor Lawrence. So at that point, it's just like if Tua doesn't prove that he's the guy, why not go get a guy who's most likely going to be the guy? So I don't know. This could be
a quarterback at Ohio State is pretty good.
Yeah, he ain't that good. He looked like shit against Indiana. And then again, and I mean, okay, I'm not gonna sit here and fall into the trap of saying that this guy came from this school, therefore he's gonna be this way or that way. But I will say Ohio State quarterbacks have not looked good in the NFL. I just haven't. Sure. Dwayne Haskins, if he's any example, and everybody's like, "Oh, well, he beat out Joe Burrow," but like, he can't even beat out Kyle Allen.
Well, there's also that kid out of Florida. So there's some quarterbacks in this draft. So I mean,
yeah, Kyle Trask's pretty good.
Yeah, he is.
I don't know personally. Do what?
I interviewed Kyle Trask actually before he became the starter at UF. I covered Gator sports and very, very good guy. And I was I'm not going to sit here and gloat, but I had a very early opinion that he was going to be a phenomenal quarterback in the future, even when we were sort of listing him as sort of a quote unquote backup. He got some starting potential due to injuries and whatnot, but I was very, very happy when he got the opportunity to start, was named the starter. I thought he was going to do really big things.
That's cool. I didn't know you interviewed him.
Nice guy. Very nice guy.
Well, I mean, his name is Kyle, so.
Oh, I mean, okay. I have nothing. I have no comeback.
Yeah.
I don't got to come back to that one.
Well, anyway, I think to wrap up the Bengals Dolphins game, I think
It's full of witty.
my perspective on this is if there's any chance that we have to find an advantage, a matchup advantage in this game, it's if Tua is playing, and then I think the Bengals don't have to worry so much about him running the ball, apparently, and they could potentially, throw. I don't know if they're going to throw different blitz packages his way because Lou Anarumo doesn't seem to be very creative. But I think there is the opportunity, I think, for the Bengals to maybe have a decent game if Tua is indeed starting. But then again, you can probably look at it from the opposite perspective. Maybe Brian Flores is throwing him back in this game because he's like, well, what better game for the Tua to bounce back than against the Bengals? I mean, he could have said that against the Jets, and he didn't play against the Jets. And by the way, Alex, I don't know if you watched the last episode of the of this. Well, I guess the last predictions episode, but me and Thomas actually both picked the Jets to win that game, and that didn't go so well for us.
No,
but
you talked me into doing it.
Yeah, I did. I was the one who made that call, and then Thomas changed his pick based on my explanation.
Okay.
I just did it because I just wanted to throw the Jets a bone. I was like, look, Jets, if y'all want to do it, it's going to have to be against the Dolphins when they're down, right? No, the Jets just suck that bad.
You're both insane. I got it.
I just threw a bone for the Jets. That was it. I was like, here, I'm throwing y'all a bone. Here go a bone.
It just seems like we're starting to devalue the 0-16 season, like the impact of an 0-16 season, because the Browns just had an 0-16 season like 3 years ago, and like I mentioned to Thomas before, it was Greg Williams was involved in that one too. So maybe start raising the eyebrow a little bit at Greg Williams, but then again, maybe that's just his
maybe both eyebrows.
County Gate.
I just don't want to wish that on anybody. Like, I just do not want to wish 0-16. Like Cleveland, we had a parade. Like it was just
a cynical parade of cynicism.
Like I was so mad at Browns fans. They were like, "Hey, you want to come to our 0-16?" I'm like, man, fuck your 0-16 parade. I'm like what? Well, there was
There were some Bengals fans talking about like, oh man, I hope the Bengals go 0-16 this year just to really push home how bad we are. I'm like, what are you talking about? You want to go 0-16? You're out of your mind. Yeah, that pissed me off so much. I'm like, you know what? I'm down to go get the number 1 pick. I'm down to go get Joe Burrow, but we don't have to go 0-16 to get that pick. I was so mad when people were saying that. Like, you guys have no pride. No pride.
Ain't gonna be no 0-16 parade this year.
Oh boy. A couple of things real quick, Kyle and Thomas, that I will say about this Bengals and Dolphins game is that to focus for a moment on the Bengals defense. Look, this defense is as bad as they are. Okay. Hold that thought. As bad as they are opportunistic.
That's true.
Here, as bad as they were last year. Last year, they actually broke records in terms of how bad they were, which is about the only record that I can say that we as Bengals fans have to gloat for. It's the record you don't want. It's the second worst in terms of history of the NFL, the second worst defense in terms of yards allowed in NFL history. Well, they've come back. They made some key signings. Some of those signings haven't worked out. I'm looking at DJ Reader's injury. However, they have stepped up at different points in different games. They've come up with some key takeaways. They've come out with some key plays that have limited damage. And you know what? As bad as the stats show still on the yardage part, the intangibles that they've displayed give me some semblance of hope. And I think that once they are able to get some semblance of a pass rush back, it can help out a secondary that has been decimated by injuries, but is still kind of hanging in there, at least in my opinion. And they're on the field so much just because the Bengals offense has just been so one-dimensional ever since Joe Mixon went down with an injury, and we have no running. Is what it comes down to, and that is constantly keeping this Bengals defense on the field because we can't sustain any offensive drives. But the defense, being as opportunistic as they are, this is a game in which they can take advantage of a Tua if they decide to start him which right now it's looking pretty promising. But to piggyback on what you said, I think if there's any game that this defense can step up and make some plays that can affect the macro in terms of the game's result, this is one of them.
I think so. I will say to I'm going to use your word to piggyback on what you were saying about the opportunistic Bengals defense. I was actually saying that very early on this year. When it was looking like, hey, maybe if we can get a couple of things right, maybe we can turn this around and start being competitive and maybe even make an unlikely playoff run or something like that. I was mentioning it's like, the defense has looked really bad at points, but pay attention because this reminds me of that 2005 squad where, some teams were running all the hell over us, but that team managed to guys like, Deltha O'Neal, Brian Simmons, they managed to come up with these key turnovers in certain situations. And because you had a guy like, Carson Palmer behind center who could actually take advantage of those turnovers, unlike, my boy, Andy Dalton, who was not very good at taking advantage of turnovers. That was a big thing that led that 05 team to be one of the teams that people were talking about as like a dark horse Super Bowl contender before Palmer went down. Now, I'm not saying Joe Burrow was going to lead us to the Super Bowl in his rookie season or anything like that, but I am saying that had things kind of turned around a little bit faster, then I totally could have seen them becoming a playoff team, even with the defense looking as bad as they look.
No, I mean, our offensive line is probably the worst group of offensive linemen I've seen in NFL history.
Well, that would have been part of the turning it around.
Oh, right. That's where we get 5 new linemen in week 5, and we throw them in there, and they're awesome.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's the thing. That probably would have had to be the catalyst for us actually win some of these games instead of because I mean, like I said, at the time it kind of felt like you just got to change one or two things and you start winning these games. The offensive line was probably one of those things.
I can't disagree with that.
I think you had Quentin Spain in week 3. I mean, things would have looked better then, I think.
Maybe Brandon Allen could bring your offensive line some magic. Come on, Brandon Allen, I'm rooting for you.
Well, you know what? They looked less awful around Brandon Allen than they looked around Ryan Finley. So that's progress.
I am probably Brandon Allen's biggest fan.
And Thomas, the sarcasm is oozing out of your screen. Okay, stop it. Making me nauseous.
I'm a huge Brandon. Come on, Brandon Allen. He got some magic in him.
No, he
says Brandon Allen, and
you
never said that statement before.
Thomas is a real Brandon Allen fan because he's a Browns fan. He doesn't want the Bengals to do well, so he likes Brandon Allen.
Nobody's got some magic in him according to him.
I have never said I do not want the Bengals not to do well. In fact, if you go back on the tape, I probably said more positive things about the Bengals than you have, Kyle.
Well, you know what? When you're on ground zero, it's kind of hard to not be cynical.
Yeah, that's true. That's called being a realist, Kyle. Welcome.
Shut up.
Come on, Brandon Allen. Make me look like a genius. No,
so let's go ahead and move on to the outlook for the AFC North. Since I think we've talked enough about that team down the street from me that just isn't actually any good. So let's go ahead and talk about these Ravens and Steelers. The Ravens. Okay, so it's kind of hard to really get anything, I feel, from this game from the Ravens because they were just so decimated. It's like, to take this game and be like, oh, well, they're clearly they don't deserve to be a playoff team. It's kind of like, I mean, you got to give some credit to the next man up mentality to the point where, you're looking at the Ravens, you're like, you guys got to perform better than that, even if you're playing backups. But at the same time, like, it's really hard to take that as an example and be like, oh, the Ravens clearly aren't a playoff team because they can't beat the Steelers with, like, practice squad players.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can glean from that matchup. I mean, like you said, they were decimated by injuries. They had second string and at times third strings that were stepping in. I think even on the first drive, they had multiple injuries. I mean, it was just like this is a game in which rather than throw shade at the Ravens, you really got to look at the Steelers and say, like, guys, what were you doing? Why didn't you win the game 30-3? You know, you take an undefeated team, and that raises more question marks on the Steelers than the Ravens in my mind. And I know that you guys will probably agree with me on that.
Well, and Mike Tomlin called the Steelers out for it. You know, he basically came out and said the effort was just not there. And this goes along with the point that I've been trying to make all year, that this is the fakest ass undefeated team I've ever seen. I was so looking forward to the Bengals coming out and having a good game against the Steelers and maybe even upsetting them in Joe Burrow's first game against the Steelers, because that would have been hilarious. And I was about to come on this and just call that team out for being the fakest ass undefeated team I've ever seen in my entire life. But you know what? They blew my Bengals out, and I'll give them credit for that. But was that your only good win all year?
See, I'm gonna actually defend both of these teams for one reason only, and that's because of the cancellations and the move backs. I'm not sure. I'm not an NFL player. I don't know what it's like to ramp up for a game, but I can only imagine. You know, you're preparing to play on Thursday, and you're like, "Oh, okay, we're not playing on Thursday. We're gonna play on Sunday. Okay, we're not playing on Sunday. Okay, we're going to play on Monday. No, okay, we're not playing on Monday. We're playing on Tuesday. No, we're not playing on Tuesday. We are playing on Wednesday." So, you know, you have cancellations. You have players missing games because of COVID. You're playing your first Wednesday night game of your career as you probably ever play. You know, there probably has to be something to be said about the cancellations and the ramp-ups and the practices and the non-practices. And it probably should have affected the Ravens more than the Steelers, obviously, and the Steelers should have been more prepared for that game. But maybe the Steelers, you know, they always talk about the Steelers playing down to their opponent. They obviously did that game, and I'm not sure. This game was just so weird. Like, it was just such a weird game. It's a Wednesday afternoon game. I just think the mental toughness of this game wasn't there, and it was obvious, and it kind of felt like, oh, here we go. And the Ravens already had a game. The Steelers already had a game moved because of COVID. So this whole game was just weird to me for both teams. So I'm not sure if I can really get mad at either team for how they played when they played the first ever Wednesday night game. They pretty much did an experiment for the NFL. That's what this was.
Sure.
Well, I think they're both going to have a chance to redeem themselves this week because they both draw NFC East teams. So,
they both get short weeks. They both get short weeks, though.
Well,
they both get short weeks.
The Steelers game got moved back to Tuesday, didn't it? Did the Ravens play on Monday and the Steelers play on Tuesday, I believe?
Let me double check real quick. Yep, it's Monday.
Steelers play Monday. Ravens play Tuesday. So I guess that's the reverse of what I said, but
that's unfair to the Steelers. But I mean, you know, I don't really care. Come on, Alex Smith, I'm rooting for you.
Dude, I'm rooting for Alex Smith every week. Like, are you kidding me? After the way he came back, I mean, even before I wanted something to inspire Joe Burrow. Even before that, I was like, that's an amazing story. That inspires me to like just give everything that I have 100% and give everything that I'm trying to shoot for. I try to, attack it with as much as I possibly can, because you see a guy like Alex Smith go out there and he wants to be an NFL quarterback so bad that he's willing to come back from almost dying and pushing himself to a completely unprecedented comeback that nobody's ever even attempted before.
Okay, I see how they do this. I get why they did it. So they both have the same amount. They both have 6 days off before the next game. They both have 6 games off before the next game, and I guess they'll give the Steelers 6 games off before the Bills, and I guess the short week versus the Browns instead of the short week versus I don't know. Give them less time to prepare.
Calculus here.
Yeah, give them okay. So the Ravens don't play on Monday night because the Ravens played on Monday night, and they'll have a whole week to prepare for the Browns, and they don't deserve to have a whole week to prepare for the Browns. They deserve to have 6 days to prepare for the Browns, or 5 days, I guess. So take that, Baltimore. You don't deserve a full week to prepare for us. We'll get you at half speed.
Well, you know what? Based on the way that they played you guys last time, I don't think they needed a whole week to prepare.
Oh boy.
We'll see. I should go to that game. I should go to that game.
Hey man, Baker had rib injuries. Leave him alone.
At least he didn't have calves.
That was week 1. That was literally here's the thing though. The Browns played the Ravens week 1 with a new coach, new system, pandemic football. Come on, man, give us a break. I don't know. We'll talk about this next week.
Yeah. Oh right, it was the Steelers game. He had the rib injuries, not the Ravens game. Steelers game.
He just looked bad on the Steelers game, honestly.
Yeah.
He didn't wake up feeling dangerous. The danger wasn't there. The danger was to himself.
Over or under how many more times Alex makes that joke today?
I'm gonna put.
I'll give it 5 more times. I'll give it 5 more times.
Give me 5 minutes, and I can weave it into a big monologue.
I just want him to plant the flag on the middle of the field again. That shit was funny.
That was hilarious. That's part of why I love Baker Mayfield coming out of college, because I'm like, yes, that guy. And then he went to the Browns.
He's never going to do that again. He's never going to do that again.
Well, he's never going to play in the stadium again. So
you drink that White Claw, Thomas.
You know what though? I'll tell you one thing: if Baker Mayfield plants a Browns flag in the middle of Pittsburgh Stadium, I might consider becoming a half Browns fan.
Hey man, I'm a big Joe Burrow fan.
Supported the Browns.
I'm a big Joe Burrow fan. I'm a huge Joe Burrow fan. I'm
already a Baker Mayfield fan, but I'm not gonna, and I'll say I would rather see the Browns do well than the Steelers or Ravens. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm a Bengals fan, and therefore the Browns are like the rivals. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
And then in a month, you get the glory to analyze the Browns' first playoff game with me without talking about the Bengals at all. Let's get
Joe Burrow will be the one doing.
Then
maybe Burrow will come back and be the one doing the commercials. I don't know. I love it.
Have you seen the setup? Have you ever known me to not talk about the Bengals in any conversation we've ever had?
We'd be in the bar talking about women, and he'd be like, "Yeah, so them Bengals." And I'm like, "Shut up about AJ Green and Andy Dalton."
I don't believe that happened, but fair enough. Well, anyway, just to go ahead and wrap up the AFC North. Like I said, the Ravens are on the outside of the playoff race looking in now, which is hilarious. But they have a chance. There is a chance for them to get back in control of the playoff seed, but it would require the Colts to lose to the Texans, which that's probably not happening. No, the Ravens would probably – I would imagine the Ravens would probably beat a weak-ass Cowboys team, but you never know. Steelers probably going to stay undefeated against the Washington football team, but you never know. Alex Smith, you could be my hero once again if you knock him off. But anyway, I think that is probably going to do it for this edition of the Battle of Ohio podcast. Alex, I really appreciate you coming on. You were not the first guest we ever had, but you were the first person who I had in mind when I thought, hey, I'm going to do this podcast. Who should I bring on? You were the first person I talked about. So we finally got you on, I think 3 people in. But
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, guys. I really had a lot of fun.
Yeah. We have fun having you, man. Great people.
Yeah. If you're interested in coming on again, we'd always love to have you. Stay tuned, everybody, by the way, for tomorrow there will be a new episode of Predictions that'll come out, and I believe Alex is sticking around while we're actually about to record that right now, but when you're watching this, it won't be coming out for about a day. But anyway, yeah, you can find me at Kyle Phelps 92 on Twitter and facebook.com/thephelps. You can find Thomas at T_star94 on Twitter and Instagram, and Blowdown page on YouTube where he does like comedy videos, TikTok montages, etc. Would you like to tell anybody where they can find you, Alex?
Sure, absolutely. On Twitter, I'm at Alex_Peterman, Peterman. I do a lot of local coverage, and if there's any Florida fans out there, especially South Florida, work is always found at the Palm Beach Post. And then my baby personally is Locker Room Update, a network I've started, and we've transitioned it from an NFL site over to a little bit more local coverage, but you can always find the work there as well. I appreciate you guys.
All right, man.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you coming on, and we will see everybody next week. Who dey?
Who dey?
Go Browns. Go Browns.
Got you.
And
out
White
match
Claw, I
this
guess.
week.
White Claw. That goes hand in hand, those two.
Of the historic rivalry between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns.